McLaren's Ayrton Senna once again taking pole position from his teammate Alain Prost. Nigel Mansell qualifying 11th, Derek Warwick 12th, and Jonathan Palmer 24th. So to Murray Walker and James Hunt for the start, and would you believe it's raining?
And away they go. A good start by Alboreto. Berger, who goes into second place. Berger is now right up behind Ayrton Senna, and Nannini has gone into third place as they go up the straight. It is Ayrton Senna leading. Then you can see what the conditions are like. Absolutely appalling. And Nannini is in third position behind Berger. So it's Senna, Berger, Nannini, Prost, then Alboreto and Capelli in the march.
Yes, Prost was pretty slow away, got a lot of wheel spin, couldn't get any grip, and actually had quite a big slide coming out of the first corner. And you can see Senna's car twitching away as he slides it, wheels spinning the rear wheels, of course, in these conditions. The cars are quite twitchy, and this is good conditions for the normally aspirated cars. Senna already building up a little bit of a lead. Of course, Berger will need a bit of space to see where he's going, because it's as bad as it looks in the cockpit from our pictures. When you see nothing through that ball of spray, that's exactly what the drivers see when they're following another car. Nothing.
So do we now wait for them to come down the reverse side? They're going through the forest, and that's Piquet. Piquet is stationary. Nelson Piquet stopped on the first lap. He spun at the second chicane, and he gets away last.
On slicks. Now that's a gamble that is, well, that's a really stupid decision if I'm correct. I'll have another look at his car, but it looked like slicks to me. There is Senna building up a bit of a lead now.
And behind Ayrton Senna, who's got about 3 seconds lead, 2 seconds lead visually, it's Gerhard Berger, then the first 3.5-litre car. It is that of Alessandro Nannini. 1 lap is about to be completed in this 44-lap race. It is Ayrton Senna leading. His teammate Prost is down in 4th place. There goes Senna across the line. Look for Berger now, his engine misfiring, and Nannini is closing a bit on the Ferrari. There is Alain Prost in 4th position. Michele Alboreto is in 5th place. That is Capelli in 6th position. Then a long gap before Boutsen goes through in 7th place. And that is Nigel Mansell 8th, Derek Warwick 9th, Riccardo Patrese 10th, and Nakajima in 11th place. And now I think we're going to see a replay of what happened to Nelson Piquet. Here he is losing it, spinning straight into the tyres. Now the question is, has he damaged his Lotus as the rest of them get through? Well, if Nelson Piquet was on slick tyres, that is indeed a gamble. On their second lap, Piquet is touring into the pits as Senna leads on lap 2. You can see the gap between himself and Berger in the Ferrari, who is second. It's still Nannini in 3rd place. That is the Lotus part of the pits, with Peter Waugh waiting to greet, well, perhaps greet isn't the right word, meet Nelson Piquet as he comes in. They're going to remove the damaged parts of the car.
And Nelson Piquet started on slicks, and really, that's a disastrously stupid decision, because the track was far too wet, and the golden rule is always do what the weather is doing at the time. And Piquet has much to experience, and I really get the feeling that it was an a decision that he didn't consider properly, and it just seems like he's not motivated.
Well, Ayrton Senna now is 2.8 seconds ahead of Berger there in 2nd place. In 3rd position, it is Alessandro Nannini. 4th is Alain Prost. 5th is Michele Alboreto, and 6th is Capelli. So 2 3.5-litre cars in the first 6 places, and Ayrton Senna is in a tremendously strong position. He is the only driver in the race with a clear track ahead of him, nearly 3 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger on this, the 3rd lap. And you see in the background, Berger being Nannini there in 3rd position. Then in 4th position, there is Alain Prost. 5th, still Michele Alboreto. In 6th position, it is still Capelli. And the 3.5-litre cars may well be starting to catch Berger in particular later on, and we're wondering how Berger's Ferrari is going to go as far as fuel is concerned. John Barnard, the technical chief of Ferrari, is here. He told me that they had a different race plan for Germany. We expected it to be that the Ferraris would go very slow in comparison with Silverstone at the beginning of the race. That certainly isn't the case at the moment, with Berger in second place and Alboreto in fifth position. But now here is Ayrton Senna leading the German Grand Prix on lap 3. Long, long way to go into one of the chicanes. There are 3 on the 4.2-mile lap, 1 on each of the long curving legs that join the stadium section, which Senna is in now. And the gap between Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger, which I'm taking as I talk to you, is 4.5 seconds. The gap between Berger and Nannini is 1.6 seconds. Senna leads across the line. 3 laps completed. His engine sounding crisp. Berger is now 2 seconds ahead of Nannini. Prost is still in 4th place. Alboreto is 5th. Then Capelli is in 5th position, in 6th place. 6th position, Capelli. 7th is Boutsen. In 8th position is Nigel Mansell, looking good. Ahead of 9th. Derek Warwick. 10th is Riccardo Patrese. The cars, as you can see, are very strung out, and that is Riccardo Patrese in 10th place. There's Nakajima. That is Eddie Cheever. Here is Mauricio Gugelmin ahead of Andrea De Cesaris in the blue and white Real in 14th place. And the fastest lap we have so far is Ayrton Senna, his 3rd lap, 2 minutes 5.9 seconds, and that compares with the record lap here at Hockenheim, 1 minute 45.7, Nigel Mansell last year. And of course the conditions are dramatically different. There's the gap, 4.3 seconds between Senna in the lead and Berger in 2nd place.
Yes, and Prost will now have to start doing something about his current 4th position if he's going to stand any real chance of getting at teammate Ayrton Senna. The track is drying a little bit. The lap times are starting to come down. Everybody's going just a little bit quicker. And at the moment, we've got no real sign of rain. The sky looks angry, but it doesn't look like rain is imminent. And so, in due course, if nothing changes, they're going to be in for dry tyres. And that, of course, is an absolutely critical decision, the timing of when to put the dry tyres on.
Senna is pulling away from Berger. He's over 6 seconds ahead now as you look at him. But Berger is definitely being caught not only by Alessandro Nannini, who is 3rd, but also by Alain Prost, who is in 4th place. The gap between Berger in 2nd place and Prost in 4th position, and there he is, 3.6 seconds. Alboreto here in 5th position. There is Capelli in 6th place in the Leighton House March 3.5-litre car. Boutsen in 7th place. Coming towards you now, Nigel Mansell, who is in 8th place. That is Derek Warwick in the Arrows, who is 9th. Riccardo Patrese, number 6, is 10th. In the Yellow Lotus, 11th place, Nakajima. In 12th position, Eddie Cheever. In the yellow helmet is Gugelmin. That is Andrea De Cesaris. And René Arnoux in the Ligier with a very high airbox at the back. It's the first time we've seen that this season. Is in 15th position. Jonathan Palmer is 19th. Julian Bailey, incidentally, sadly failed to qualify in the final practice yesterday.
Yeah, and the first casualty of the wet conditions, apart from PK, seems to be Stefano Modena, who's now down to 20th place, having made a good start and got well up in the wet, which you'd expect with his talent, but his engine is missing badly, and it sounded like a good old waterlogged misfire to me.
You're watching Ayrton Senna, the brilliant Brazilian, 4 victories in the World Championship so far out of 8 races, as has his teammate Alain Prost. But even though the stadium section is perhaps starting to dry out a bit, do please remember that the long curving sections in the forest will not be drying out, because there is no way that the spray can get away. No change for the first four. So now here, completing the fifth lap, Ayrton Senna is leading. In second place is Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, and the gap is 6.2 seconds. Nannini is in third place. Alain Prost is in fourth position. Michele Alboreto, some way back, coming towards us, is in fifth place. And sixth is Capelli in the march.
And Alain Prost is starting to move up on Berger and Nannini. So Prost has realised that he's got to mount his challenge, because Senna's now got a 6-second lead over Berger. And Prost has a lot to prove today, certainly to the French, because they gave him a real rifting for giving up at Silverstone in the conditions that he didn't like. And one of the ways he can prove it, they really accuse him of chickening out, and one way he can prove that that isn't him is that he can fight his way past Nannini and Berger. There's Berger. Now the critical time, you can see there's still a fair bit of spray coming off the tyres, and at that stage one has, as Modena comes into the pits to have his misfire looked at by the look of things. And when the spray coming off the tyres, then wets are the order of the day. However, when they stop actually lifting water off the track, and you can, although it can still be damp, then one has to think pretty swiftly about getting onto dry tyres, but not quite yet.
Just one retirement from the German Grand Prix so far. Nelson Piquet, who made that ill-judged decision, his or somebody else's, I know not, but ill-judged it was, out of the race, having started on slicks and spun into the barrier.
Yes, it's absolutely extraordinary, that, and I have to tell you, Murray, that is definitely Piquet's decision. Somebody else might have tried to make the decision, but the driver has the final say always on something like that. There's Ron Dennis on the inset. The boss of the McLaren team, but Piquet's decision really is extraordinary. One can only say it smacked of lack of interest and motivation, because he's been around quite long enough to know better than to do anything as stupid as that.
Well, here's somebody, another Brazilian, who is driving superbly in the conditions. Ayrton Senna, we know how good he is, because he won his first wet Grand Prix in Brazil, in Portugal in 1985 at Estoril, in the most appalling conditions. And here he is. You can see the spray streaming up from his tyres. He's now 7.3 seconds ahead of Berger in the Ferrari, who is second, who is just about 3 seconds ahead of Nannini. And Nigel Mansell in the Williams Judd is gaining on Boutsen. He's only 1.7 seconds behind Boutsen, who is in 7th place. You just saw the first 6 there. Now, as you look at the McLaren, look back through your picture to see Berger in the Ferrari. There he is, coming up to one of the 2 chicanes. Boutsen with Prost right on his tail now in 4th place. Less than a second between Nannini, but Nannini in 3rd place, I apologise, not Boutsen, who is 7th. So it's Senna, Berger, Nannini, who has got Prost right behind him, gaining. And the world champion, not of 1985 and 86, Alain Prost, not at all anxious to see Ayrton Senna increasing his lead over him. And now I'm looking across the stadium as you look at Senna, and I can tell you that Prost, and you'll see him soon, I'm sure, is very, very close indeed to Nannini in 3rd place. And already Senna is starting to move about the circuit, I think looking for wet patches.
Yes, now Prost, the vital corner for Prost is this one that we're looking at. He needs to get really close to Nannini and then try and power his way past on the straight on the way up to the first chicane. So this is the battle of the moment. Looking back down the track, and there is Senna. into the chicane, but it's Prost and Nannini that we want to see. But unfortunately, we're not allowed to. Well, that is very frustrating when there's a battle going on and we sit and look at an empty track. That's a disgrace.
Well, there it is. There is Prost ahead of Nannini. So Alain Prost is up into third place. Senna leads. Berger in second place. Up into third place on lap 8 out of 44 goes Alain Prost. That is Nannini down in fourth place. You see the red and white McLaren ahead of him.
Yeah, that's very frustrating. While Prost was passing Nannini, we were looking at an empty track. Now, I'm afraid that's down to German TV, and there's nothing we can do about it.
But Alain Prost is doing everything he can now about getting second place from Gerhard Berger. We are on lap 8. Senna leads by 7.5 seconds. Berger second. There he is, number 28, with the spray pouring out from the rear wing of the Ferrari. Very small rear wings, you will note here at Hockenheim, because the thing to do is get the maximum speed on the long curving sections in the forest at the expense of grip in the stadium, which is where they are now. You just have to do the best you can there with less downforce than ideally you would like, because the vital thing to do at Hockenheim is to go as quickly as you can on the fast bits. And yesterday they were doing, the McLarens, 207 miles an hour. So it is 8.1 seconds ahead. Senna is ahead of Berger. Berger is 3.5 seconds ahead of this battle, which you are looking at. That's Nannini in fourth place. Prost in third position. It's still Alboreto fifth. 7 seconds. And Mansell has passed Thierry Boutsen and moved up into seventh place. Now you see what I mean about the forest.
Yes, it is a very slow drying circuit, this, but certainly there is a dry line beginning to appear around quite a lot of the lap. And looking at the sky, further rain does not look imminent, and the timing of the decision to change onto dry tyres must now be buzzing around the thinking drivers' heads. I'm quite sure Senna is beginning to look for the chance, because tradition has proved that the people who change onto wets early usually do best. Onto dry tyres, get off the wets early, usually have the advantage. So the timing is really crucial.
Race order, lap 9 out of 44. Senna that you're looking at leads Berger in the background by 8 seconds. Prost is third. Nannini is fourth. Alboreto is fifth. Capelli is sixth. Mansell is now seventh. Boutsen is ninth. Boutsen is eighth. Warwick is ninth. Patrese is in 10th position. Nakajima is 11th. Gugelmin is 12th. And Alio has come into the pits to change tyres. This is the first driver that we've had change from wets to slicks. Philippe Alliot, the Frenchman, has done that, and we'll soon see, I hope, whether he has gained an advantage from that. Philippe Alliot then is on slick tyres now, as you look at Gerhard Berger on wets, with the back of the Ferrari stepping out. There's Prost with the back of the McLaren stepping out, and Nannini. This is a good scrap for second, third and fourth position.
What's interesting is that Senna is doing the right thing and already moving off the dry line on the straights to get his tyres wet there. And certainly that will preserve the wet tyres and their performance for longer. And I'm surprised that Prost is not doing that and is just staying on the dry line when he could be overcooling his tyres.
And Nigel Mansell is doing another Silverstone. He is now catching Ivan Capelli, who is in 6th position. That's Alio being caught and passed and losing it. Alio has paid the price already for moving on to slicks. You saw what happened. He went off in practice yesterday, ripped the right front wheel off his car. He came onto slicks, obviously too early. He was worried about Senna passing him, I suspect. And let's look at it again. There is Alain in the Lola. He's just gone onto slick tyres. There is Senna going up on the inside. Alain is pushed, is offline, loses the Lola, straight into the tyres and the barrier behind them, the right rear wheel, and that is where Nelson Piquet also lost his Lotus. And here is race leader Ayrton Senna on lap 10, coming up to a quarter distance. Fastest lap, 2 minutes 5.27. And Ayrton Senna leads on lap 10 from Gerhard Berger in second place. Alain Prost is in third position. In fourth place, it is Alessandro Nannini. In fifth position, Michele Alboreto. Sixth is Capelli, who is being caught by the seventh place man, Nigel Mansell. Across the line into his 11th lap. That's Senna. Now, the gap between Berger and Prost is decreasing. It is only 2.2 seconds. Prost is pulling away from Nannini, who is in fourth place. Alboreto is all by himself in fifth position. And I'm going to give you the gap between Ivan Capelli in the march as you watched race leader Ayrton Senna. The gap between Capelli and Mansell, which was just under 6 seconds last time I took it, and is still about the same. So now going through Ayrton Senna's mind, and no doubt Ron Dennis's, his team chief, as you look at the only German in the race, Bernd Schneider, in the German Zack-Speed with its four-cylinder turbocharged engine. And Schneider is well down the running, but in the running, and that's very important for him. The McLaren team is very much up to strength here. Senna and Prost on the circuit, as ever, all their top management here. Just one man missing, Richard West, who is still in England. And across the line comes Bernd Schneider, and there goes Senna. Now you can see the gap in the background as Senna, now on his 11th lap, comes towards us. 10.6 seconds ahead of Berger, 12 seconds ahead of Prost. So that means to say that Alain Prost is only 2.2 seconds behind Gerhard Berger in second place. This is Senna going into the right-handed Sachs curve, out of it, now into the Opel curve to complete the lap. This will be the end of his 11th lap. McLaren leads, Ferrari second, but for how much longer? Because you're going to soon see, I think, I can anyway, that Berger and Prost are getting closer and closer thanks to Alain Prost. The gap between Berger and Prost is now 1 second.
And a new fastest lap for Alain Prost in the chase of Berger. There we look down on them from the helicopter. Just a tiny fraction of a second quicker than Senna's fastest lap. So Prost is certainly fighting hard this time, and he's closing in on Berger there. Look at that with the slipstream. Break up. So Prost now definitely challenging, and Berger, big slide, tremendous stuff from Berger, just keeping his foot hard down, spinning those rear wheels. That's spectacular stuff from Gerhard Berger.
Yes, and spectacular stuff from Alain Prost, who now truly is with the Ferrari and challenging for second place. Alain Prost, who got away not all that well and was down in fourth position after one lap, is now right up with Gerhard Berger, the V6 turbocharged Ferrari in front of him, and this is where real courage is called for. Prost moves out. Is he through and up into second place? Yes! Prost is now second. Well, he chose his moment perfectly, and there is Nannini in the background. So a new order on this, the 12th lap, which is over quarter distance. Ayrton Senna leads now by some 11 seconds, and the interest now is going to be whether the two contenders for the World Championship, Senna and Prost, who have both won 4 races out of 8 this year. The contention is now between them for victory in the German Grand Prix. Senna has lapped Stefano Modena, who has been into the pits. There is Modena. And I've got a stopwatch running as you see Prost and Berger, and the gap between Senna and Prost is 12.6 seconds as they go into their 13th lap.
Yes, so Prost, courtesy of his bad start, has had to give Senna a 12.5-second start, which is, you don't really want to give that to anybody, least of all Ayrton Senna on a wet track. However, the timing of the change to dry tires, if and when it becomes necessary, could change everything. Good timing could kill that gap. Bad timing could certainly destroy any chance that Prost has got. This is a vital race for him. It's vital for his own ego after the criticism he got after the Silverstone performance, and also, more importantly, it's vital for the World Championship. There are 4 wins all, and for sure this championship is going to be won by the McLaren driver who scores the more wins.
I am interested in the undiminished speed so far of Gerhard Berger, and I'm starting to wonder whether the stories about Ferrari being concerned about fuel consumption were not entirely true. Berger is charging hard. He's in 3rd position, admittedly behind Prost and Senna in the 2 McLarens, but he's still going quickly. His fastest lap, 2 minutes 0.8 seconds, as into the pits now comes Yannick Dalmas to change his tyres. And let's hope he doesn't do the same thing as his teammate Philippe Alliot did. Lose it and damage the car. Well, here is Senna. Now, last lap, the gap between Senna and Prost was 12.6 seconds. Senna is now into his 14th lap. And Prost, as Senna goes into the right-hander at the end of the finishing straight, Prost comes up to cross the line now, followed by Berger. The gap is 12.4 seconds.
Yes, Prost is going slightly quicker than Senna, but it's almost small enough to be insignificant. Here we got a close-up of Senna, hard at work in the cockpit. You see him just balancing the car with the steering wheel. Rear wheel spinning a bit. And already Ayrton Senna is amongst the traffic. He's lapping the tail enders. And once again, they will no doubt play a part in determining the battle between the 2 McLarens, because time can be made and lost. And you see Senna now just sliding the car, balancing the car.
And now on lap 14, Senna leads Prost by 12.4 seconds. Berger is 3rd, 2 seconds behind Prost. Nannini is 4th, 3 seconds behind Berger. Alboreto is in 5th place, 4 seconds behind Nannini. Capelli is 6th and the last point scorer at the moment. Nigel Mansell is not really at the moment cutting into Capelli's lead. Yes, he is. As I talk, he's starting to close. Nigel Mansell is 7th. Boutsen is 8th. Warwick is 9th. Patrese is in 10th position. Nakajima is 11th. Gugelmin is 12th. And Jonathan Palmer is still running in 18th place. And Senna is coming through now to complete his 14th lap, with 30 still to go, twice as far to go as he has already gone. Let's see if the fact that he's had to lap some tail-enders as he goes out of the stadium section into the 4th gear right-hander towards the forest, where he builds up speed to about 170 miles an hour, has changed the gap. It's 12.6 seconds, but Prost is definitely pulling away from Berger now, who is only 4 seconds ahead of Nannini, who is 4th. Alboreto is still 5th. I'm looking now down the course to see, as you watch Senna, who has lapped Cathy in the background, how Capelli in 6th position is going against Nigel Mansell. Watch Ayrton Senna as you do so. And Mansell is now only 4.8 seconds in 7th place behind Ivan Capelli. We have the prospect of Nigel Mansell being in the points soon, and he is, of course, driving a conventionally suspended Williams car. Williams having made the dramatic decision at Silverstone to shelve the reactive suspension, which Nigel Mansell detested so much. We saw the result at Silverstone with Nigel a brilliant second, and now he is 7th in the German Grand Prix, catching Capelli. This is Andrea De Cesaris, who is 13th, followed by Eddie Cheever there in the arrows in 14th place. And reliability is good, and off has gone Jonathan Palmer. Jonathan Palmer has lost it on the stadium section, but has kept the Tyrrell running and has rejoined the course. There he is. You can see the mud and muck being thrown up from his tyres as you look at Schneider, who is in 15th place. And here is Ben Schneider in the German Zackspeed, German driver, German car, German Grand Prix, and into the pits again comes Dalmas, who is obviously unhappy about his tyre choice. Senna has completed his 15th lap. You're looking at Prost, who is about to complete his 15th lap. And once again, I've got a stopwatch running. And Prost is catching Senna, not by very much, but he has taken a second, 1 second off Ayrton Senna's lead. It is down to 11.5 seconds. That is Gerhard Berger in 3rd place, with the red light glowing at the back of the Ferrari. Watch Senna and Prost.
Yeah, so far, Senna's had a little bit more trouble with the traffic. Prost had a pretty clear run. He's managed to, the few cars that he has lapped already, he's managed to go pretty cleanly straight past. And there is Prost, still chucking up a little spray. This is now coming on to probably the wettest section of the track. And the trouble is, it dries so slowly. And we've seen what happens if you've got put dry tyres on too early. Well, that back chicane, really the wettest point on the circuit, and it's still pretty damp there through that long curve. And still be a few laps yet, I think, before it's time to go on to dry tyres. But very important to look after the wets on the areas of the circuit that are dry. And here is Senna. He's seeking out the wet patches on the straights to cool the tyres down, reduce friction and keep them, because remember that the rubber compound for these tyres is very, very much softer than the dry weather compound, and it just doesn't live on a dry road, as we see now. That's Cappy with no tyre at all on his right rear, just a rim, but he should be able to get it back to the pits.
And I'm waiting to see Alain Prost now, because as they come out in the stadium section, here is Senna. The gap was 11.498, 11.5 seconds, call it, between Senna, the leader, number 12 there, who is now on his 17th lap, and Alain Prost. It's still the same, so the gap is being maintained. Try as he may, Alain Prost is not at the moment catching Senna, despite the fact that Prost is the fastest man on the circuit. 2 minutes, 5.246 seconds is the fastest lap we've had so far. And Senna there is lapping in 2 minutes, 5.7, so there's only 1/5 of a second in it. And you've got to do a lot of laps to make up nearly 12 seconds. Caffey touring home. Fortunately for him, the right rear wheel without its tyre is clear of the ground on most of the circuit, except on the right-handers. And now Senna is coming up to catch Jonathan Palmer and lap him. Senna has already lapped Mansell is missing. We are missing Nigel Mansell from our lap charts. No, here he is. Nigel Mansell with Patrese going past. There is Senna taking Jonathan Palmer, Dr. Jonathan Palmer, and Mansell into the pits, rolling, touring into the pits. Mansell's in trouble.
Yes, he's definitely in trouble. The engine sounds like it's running, but the car's not making much forward progress. Maybe he's lost his clutch or some sort of transmission failure, and the engine's been switched off, so that looks like the end of the day's work for Mansell. Pity, because he was going well and, as usual, fighting hard. So, Ayrton Senna, 11.5 seconds to the good with Alain Prost. And what I would be doing if I was, well, driving any car, I'd be asking my team on the radio to monitor any car that goes into the pits and goes on to drive and compare its lap times. And if the lap times are anything within a second or so of what they're doing on wets, I'd come straight in myself. As soon as they're very close to a wet tire time, it'd be time to go on to dries. At the moment, nobody has successfully come in, put on dries and gone out and completed a lap. But I'll be asking my team manager to watch very carefully. So, Senna stuck in traffic.
As Nigel Mansell rejoins the race, whatever the problem was, appears to have been hopefully permanently solved, because Nigel is rejoining the race, of course, well down. But now on lap 18, Ayrton Senna is 11.7 seconds. Here he is ahead of his teammate Alain Prost. We have the familiar situation of the McLaren's first and second, as they were at San Marino, as they finished in Mexico, as they finished in Canada and Detroit and France, but not, of course, in Britain, where Nigel Mansell was second to the man you are watching, Ayrton Senna. And again, the McLarens, with Senna just straightening out a bit of oversteer as he started to slide there. The McLarens have got the right package. Two brilliant drivers, a magnificent chassis designed by Steve Nichols, the Honda engine, which is undoubtedly the best in Grand Prix racing these days. The management of Ron Dennis and all his backup people, Gordon Murray and the rest, and it is beginning to look as though they are going to be invincible here. But there is definitely a dry line now emerging on the stadium section, but not as you look at the Lola pit, but not on the Forest section, the two curving sections that are so quick and so dangerous in the wet. Senna is going into that Forest section now as Prost goes across the line, and the gap is still the same.
And in fact, Senna's just put up a new fastest lap for the race. And there it is on the caption. And that has actually gained him a second on Prost. So he's now over 12.5 seconds to the good. But there really is very little to choose between the two McLarens. Prost has got these three slower cars in front of him, and they're battling away together. So that will be a problem. And I see a Williams off the road. It looks like Mansell.
Indeed it is Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell has spun off on the stadium. Perhaps we'll see it in a moment. And it looks to me as though he's bogged down on the grass and can't get running. I wish we could show you a shot of it. Yes, he rejoined from the pits, of course. And now I can see, there is Nigel Mansell. You can see he's still got rain tyres on. And his engine is obviously dead. He's being pushed backwards, and it looks as though this is the retirement of Nigel Mansell from the German Grand Prix, as Gerhard Berger there goes through in third position. The order on lap 19 is Senna leading Prost by 12.5 seconds. Berger is third, 9 seconds behind Prost. Nannini is still fourth, and the leading 3.5-litre car, 3 seconds behind Berger. Still ahead of the fifth man, Michele Alboreto, 6 seconds ahead of him. Capelli is in sixth position in another 3.5-litre car, a March. Seventh is Thierry Boutsen. Eighth is Warwick. Ninth is Patrese. You are watching Prost. In 10th place, it's Nakajima. 11th is Gugelmin. 12th is De Cesaris. 13th, Chiva. And the leader, Senna, has lapped everybody up to the 13th man, Eddie Chiva. Schneider is 14th. And Jonathan Palmer still running. You can see him there, actually. He's about to be passed by the McLaren. And Jonathan Palmer is in 17th position. And ahead of Palmer as they cross the line is Ben Schneider. Now, Prost takes Palmer. So Alain Prost in second place has lapped Jonathan Palmer, who is 16th.
And the back markers have certainly cost Prost some time there. And now we look at him, he's still got one car to pass, but he cost him time. He's dropped another 2 seconds to Senna, who had the clear road. Can he get by under braking? It's vital for Prost that he does.
Now, probably because of the traffic, as you watch Prost, he's actually lapping slower than Berger at the moment in the Ferrari, who is behind him. But Alain Prost has had to get past Palmer and Schneider, and having passed René Arnoux, who is 17th behind Jonathan Palmer. So I would expect to see Alain Prost there in second place, speed up now that he's clear of the traffic that delayed him. Ayrton Senna is lapping in 2 minutes 5.4 seconds. Alain Prost 2 minutes 7.3. Berger in 2 minutes 6.6. And there is a tight traffic jam there as they come up to the chicane. Schneider about to be lapped by Ayrton Senna. There's the Brazilian on his 20th lap out of 44. Just a couple of laps short of half distance in the German Grand Prix. 4.2 miles per lap at Hockenheim. The lap record held by Nigel Mansell at a little under 144 miles an hour. Of course, Schneider, the back of the Zach Speed, stepped right out there. He caught it. Ayrton Senna is past him. Prost is piling on the speed now as he comes through to complete his 20th lap, Senna having already done so. And Prost, stung by the criticisms of the French, is now 14 seconds behind Senna. The gap is increasing. It really does look as though Ayrton Senna is going to be one Grand Prix clear of Prost.
And it's just started to rain again. So we have more rain falling. The umbrellas are up in the grandstands. It's only a fine drizzle at the moment, but certainly the outlook looks a bit bleaker. And that will probably please a lot of the drivers. They don't have to make a difficult decision. At the same time, I would think that some of the wet tyres are quite worn by now on the dry bits of track, and they may not be performing so well. So rain is now falling again. You can see the increase in the spray, so it's definitely wetter.
Yannick Dalmas, who is 22nd, has been passed now by Ayrton Senna, the leader. Dalmas has been into the pits to make a decision he's probably bitterly regretting, to switch to slick tyres, because he came in again and changed to wets. Here is race leader Ayrton Senna, hand up to his visor through the chicane. An immaculate drive. Ayrton Senna, 23 pole positions when he started here in Germany. He's into the stadium section now. He's through the left-hander onto the third gear, 115 mile an hour right-hander at the now up to the Opel curve, into the start and finish straight. Umbrellas out everywhere. That just was a bit of drizzle. It's stopped now as Senna completes the lap. And it's Senna, Prost, Berger. Berger is 24 seconds behind Senna, the race leader. Prost goes over the line.
It is still actually drizzling. It's so fine, one might almost describe it as precipitation only. Minor precipitation in the air, but enough certainly to keep the track wet and keep it in that condition for quite a few more laps.
What will be going on in Ayrton Senna's mind, of course, is the vital necessity to maintain his race rhythm, not to make a mistake, to lose the McLaren and go off, to be very, very careful indeed when he's lapping people, and be ever mindful of the gap between himself and Alain Prost, which is 13.3 seconds.
And a new fastest lap for Prost, just as it started to rain. 2 minutes 4.888. So Prost, and that in fact has pulled a second on Ayrton Senna, and he's now 13.4 seconds, or 13.3 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. So surprise, surprise, got a bit wetter, and Prost is the one to find something more. Now that could just mean that he's looked after his wet tires better than Senna, but it certainly didn't look like that in the early part of the race. It looked as if anything, Senna was doing more, making a more committed effort to protect his tires and keep them cool, and there is Prost over behind the caption, awarding him the new fastest lap.
12.6 seconds now. Prost is definitely catching Senna. For whatever reason, there he is. I just took the gap as they came into the stadium. The gap has come down from 14.5 to 12.5. Senna goes across the line to complete his 22nd lap. His engine's sounding okay. It's the length of the finishing straight between them now, as Senna now is being held up by Schneider. This will give Prost the opportunity further to close the gap.
Yes, it's interesting. Prost is now emanating determination for his car. He looks more fired up than I've seen him for a very long time, and I would think that is all to do with the criticism he got after Silverstone. He really looks to be giving it a bit of a charge, and this is impressive stuff from Alain Prost.
And I say again that Berger is keeping up the running now with Prost ahead of Schneider. The race order on lap 23 out of 44, over half distance completed. That is Nannini parked by the side of the circuit. Senna leads Prost by 12.5 seconds. Berger is third, 16 seconds behind Prost. Nannini is fourth, 5 seconds behind Berger, and leading the 3.5 litre cars. Alboreto is fifth in the Ferrari, Capelli is sixth, and he is 6 seconds ahead of Boutsen in the Benetton, who is in 7th position. Then in 8th place, it's Derek Warwick, not so far off the points. Riccardo Patrese in the only Williams now is in 9th position. Nakajima is 10th, Gugelmin is 11th, De Cesaris is 12th, Chiva is 14th, 13th. And there is Senna, whose target is Eddie Chiva to lap him, the man who is 13th.
Yes, and Senna's got a clear run at the moment. He'll get another couple of laps probably before he catches Chiva. But Alain Prost has got, it looks like Dalmas in front of him. And Prost and Dalmas, I think, is letting Prost through, except that Prost couldn't quite make it. And once again, we're looking at the wrong car. Senna's not doing anything. But you see the way he moves over onto the wet part of the track to try and protect those very soft compound wets. Missed the apex by a long way there, but that doesn't necessarily matter as you search for the grippiest line round these corners. And Prost lost a lot of time then. It lost 2 seconds to Senna, and it's back to 14.5 seconds. And that was really courtesy of the traffic. But Prost has now got a big clear run before he comes upon any other back markers. So we can see, really, once things are settled, just whether Prost does have any spare speed over Senna.
Gerhard Berger has just gone past the pits in 3rd place, forcibly removing one of the tear-offs from his visor to give him clear vision, threw it away as he went past the Ferrari pit. Here is Ayrton Senna. You can see how wet the track is. It is an enormously long time since we had 2 wet Grand Prix in succession. Before Silverstone, the previous wet Grand Prix was the Portuguese in 1985, which significantly was won by Ayrton Senna. Then the next partially wet one was the Belgian Grand Prix, also in 1985, but it is a heck of a long time since we've had 2 in succession. Here is Chiva in, I remind you, 13th place, followed by Senna there, who is about to lap him. And Senna, the fastest man on the circuit, remains Alain Prost. 2 minutes, 4.8 seconds. Senna leading Prost. Berger is 3rd still. Nannini is still 4th, Alboreto is 5th, Capelli is 6th, in 7th place Boutsen, 8th is Warwick, 9th is Patrese, 10th is Gugelmin, 11th is Nakajima, and 12th is De Cesaris, who has just passed Nakajima and will shortly be caught by the man you're looking at, Ayrton Senna, who has lapped the 13th. No, there's Eddie Cheever still in front of him. So here is, across the line goes Ayrton Senna.
Yes, the Jesuits performed a typically hairy manoeuvre to pass Nakajima at the end of the pit straight, which strikes me as fairly unintelligent because the Lotus Honda is bound to power right back past him on the long straight that follows. We'll see the time to pass him as it's going into the stadium.
As you watch, Alessandro Nannini there in 4th position, some 7 seconds behind Berger's Ferrari. I do wish that here in Germany we had the privilege that we had at Silverstone of being privy to the conversation that was going on between Ron Dennis, the McLaren team chief, and his 2 drivers. But we haven't got that here in Germany. But Alain Prost is not making any inroads at all at the moment into the lead of this man, number 12, the yellow-helmeted Brazilian Ayrton Senna, who remains 14.6 seconds ahead of the Frenchman, double world champion Alain Prost. Senna yet to score his first world championship win. Coming up now to Eddie Cheever in the turbocharged Arrows with its Megatron engine. And De Cesaris goes off. De Cesaris has spun. This is the stadium section. And just watch the muck that will come up off his tires as he accelerates away.
Yes, and of course the radiator pods fill up with stones, which gradually find their way out. You can see they're still flying out of the radiator pod. And that will put a few little marbles on the track for those following, which the worst danger from that, of course, is that one of these big sticky tires picks up a stone and throws it into a following driver's face. That can be quite nasty, although, of course, the visors that they wear are specially toughened. Well, they're more than toughened, they're pretty much bulletproof. So, tremendous dice going on here. This is a replay, I think, of De Cesaris getting all excited and then flying off into the boondocks. There we go, and that's just the replay of what De Cesaris has shown.
So, as De Cesaris rejoins the circuit on the replay, Ayrton Senna is now on his 26th lap out of 44. As you look at Bernd Schneider, we're seeing a lot of the German, understandably. He's the only German in the German Grand Prix. And Senna now is still just over 14 seconds ahead of Alain Prost. Nannini is actually making slight inroads into Gerhard Berger's 3rd place. The Ferrari is still there, but just 7 seconds ahead now of Nannini. Alboreto is still 5th, and actually we have still got 22 runners in this race out of the 26 who started, and that is very unusual.
Well, not for a wet race, of course. It's always like this in the wet because the cars become much more reliable. The temperatures are cooler. There's not nearly so much mechanical stress on any of the parts, either the suspension, the transmission, or the engine even. And so we always get a much greater reliability under these circumstances.
Senna now on his way to pass Philippe Streff, the Frenchman, in the very much better than last year AGS. Not surprising, it is an entirely different car from the lumbering device which the little team used last year, and it's a fine car, the 1988 one. Philippe Streff is driving it extremely well, and there goes Senna. This is lap 26. Watch him now pull out shortly. He's moved right to the right-hand side of the circuit as Gerhard Berger comes up to lap Bernd Schneider. That's Eric Zakowski in the inset, and he's the boss of the Zak Speed team. Zakowski, Zak Speed. The Z-A-K comes from Eric Zakowski's name. He made his reputation originally in saloon car racing and American racing. And as you can see, the Zak Speed team have got the tyres ready for Schneider. Is that wise, I wonder?
Well, we can only wait and see. It's wise to have them there as a precaution. Schneider's car certainly looks very unstable, but his wets don't look completely worn out. Prost, though, with both McLarens clear of traffic, Prost is looking quicker than Senna. He's got the gap back down to 13.5 seconds. And I'm going to have a listen to Senna's engine this time, when next time he passes the pits, which is where our commentary position is, opposite the pits, that is, because there's a suspicion that his engine sounded a little bit rough the last time round.
That's Alex Caffey coming through the gloom. Alex Caffey in the Dallara car. He's had a wheel replaced, of course, the right rear wheel. You saw him driving in earlier on a tyre-less right rear wheel, and he's been caught by the third place man, Gerhard Berger. This is lap 27. No change, although Prost is again starting to just ease into Ayrton Senna's lead. I see the Brazilian come into the stadium as I talk to you, and you watch Berger closing up on Caffey, and I'll be able to tell you shortly what the gap is now between Ayrton Senna, the race leader, and Alain Prost, as over the line goes Ayrton Senna to complete his 27th lap. The gap was 13.5 seconds. Prost is coming up to the line now, behind and to lap Eddie Cheever, and the gap is 13.1 seconds now. So Prost is catching Senna, but nothing like quickly enough, of course.
Yes, that's right. I mean, Senna's got a comfortable lead, which he seems quite capable of protecting as and when he wants. 13 seconds. He's got less than 20 laps to go. It's a pretty comfortable lead, really.
Senna was looking as though he was having to struggle a bit there. The course is very greasy on the two looping sections of the course, and it's all too easy to lose adhesion. Fastest man still Alain Prost. 2 minutes, 4.8 seconds, no change there.
And it is raining slightly again. Again, the very, very finest drizzle, but once more, just enough to keep the track wet enough that it's beginning to look now as if dry weather slick tyres won't be necessary during this race. And there is Schneider, and he's coming, he's having a new set of wets fitted. Albeit fairly slowly by the look of things.
Prost, second, 13 seconds behind Senna. Third is Berger, fourth is Nannini, fifth is Alboreto, sixth is Capelli, seventh is Fuchsen, eighth is Warwick, ninth is Gugelmin. And here is Alain Prost. And once again, the interest in this race very definitely at the moment. And I, with James, am listening to Senna's engine, and there certainly sounds something odd about it. It may just be the way he's changing up. But now, Prost is 12 seconds behind Senna. He's definitely catching him. Alain Prost is 12 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. This is the 29th lap. It's a 44-lap race. You can make your own calculations. But if Prost goes on the way he is going, in the latter stages of the race, it could get to be very interesting indeed.
Yes, he's catching Ayrton at just about a second a lap at the moment. Ayrton's looking quite twitchy there. It may be that his rear tyres are a little bit worn. That's certainly well possible. I was having a look at them when we had him in close-up just now, and they didn't look too bad, but the car does look a tiny bit twitchy now. We'll see round fast loop. See there, the back's just stepping out. It's not getting quite the bite that he'd like, and it may be that he's just worked them a little bit hard with a bit too much wheel spin early on in the race. And if that's what he's done, it could be an expensive way to have enjoyed himself, because it's fun spinning the wheels and getting the car going, but if it's hurting the rear tyres, he may live to regret that.
He's coming up to lap Nakajima now, who is in 12th position. There's the Japanese driver. Satoru Nakajima, number 2 in the Lotus, driving in his 23rd Grand Prix, is passed and lapped by Ayrton Senna, who will now be setting about Andrea de Cesaris, who is 11th.
Both Prost and Senna are being held up there, and Prost also lost time, but he's got through. Same corner coming into the stadium. So Senna with more traffic ahead of him.
Senna there ahead of Nakajima. As I said, he's got the sometimes very difficult Andrea de Cesaris to get past shortly. Prost has passed.
Prost in the spray, but I think that was Senna pulling out to the left. It was. So Senna is through without losing any time. So it's a question of where Prost will catch this pair. And it's vital that you're lucky enough to catch back markers on this long straights. And then, of course, you lose no time. That was Prost in the background. And a pretty brave manoeuvre from Cesaris, but we expect that. They don't always work, but he always tries them.
Yeah, Prost makes no bones about the fact that he does not like this situation that he's faced with now. He says that Senna will dive in and take chances where Prost is just not prepared to do it. And Senna certainly dived in there when he passed de Cesaris. And now he's coming through to complete his 30th lap, he being Senna. There he is ahead of de Cesaris and Patrese. But Prost has still got to catch. See, Prost has got to catch Nakajima, then Patrese, and then de Cesaris, all of whom Senna has passed. And the gap now between the two McLarens is almost exactly the same, 11.4 seconds. Race order on this, the 31st lap. Ayrton Senna is 11.4 seconds ahead of Prost, who is actually lapping faster than him. In third position, it is still Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, who is now a long way behind, maybe having to go easy on his fuel. In fourth position, it is Alessandro Nannini. Fifth is Alboreto, and in sixth place, it's Capelli.
And Prost is faced with Nakajima, who presents potentially a bigger problem to pass than the Atmo cars, because of course he also has a Honda engine and will be just about as quick as Prost on the straight. So it means that Prost has got to fight his way past, and Nakajima, with his relative lack of experience, is quite conceivable that he won't notice Prost coming.
That's Nakajima in 12th place. There is Prost behind him in the distinctive red and white McLaren. Second place, 11.4 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. Here is the Japanese driver. And this is Senna leading, having got past Arnoux.
And it looks horribly as if Prost could catch Nakajima in the stadium. And that would be very bad news for him, because unless he can go straight past him, it will cost him time having to follow the Japanese driver through the stadium.
That's Gunter Schmidt in the inset, the boss of the Real wheel concern, whose sponsor, Andrea de Cesaris, whose car you are watching. The very can be irascible Gunter Schmidt, but he's in quite good humour these days. And not surprisingly, because Andrea de Cesaris has actually been giving him very good value for money, as has Ayrton Senna been giving the McLaren team good value for money. He is now on his 32nd lap. Prost is gaining on Nakajima. The gap still virtually the same, 11.4 seconds. And for a change, we look at the man who is in third position, Gerhard Berger. He's now some 33 seconds behind Prost, who is second, but still running. Gerhard Berger, who finished second in the Brazilian Grand Prix in his Ferrari, second at Monaco, third in Mexico. He's been in the points, in fact, 5 times this year, but always up there and never quite winning this year.
Well, the clouds seem to have lifted quite a lot. The weather looks drier than any time previously during the race. So it'll be interesting to see. It all might get a bit marginal at the end. I don't think it'll be worth anybody's while to come in and change onto dry tyres, even if it gets quite dry at the end. But what we may get is, if it dries quite quickly, we'll get dramas with punctures possibly, and people getting very, very worn wet tyres, which will slow them down fairly dramatically.
Yeah, with 13 laps to go, as you see from the caption up there, let us not forget that the turbo cars are on only 150 litres of fuel. The wet conditions are not going to help them with their fuel consumption problem, which was a problem even if it had been dry, because there's wheel spin in the wet. There's a tendency perhaps to use a lower gear in the wet, which will also increase fuel consumption, and therefore we'll have to be watching very carefully in the closing stages of the race.
Yes, also the engine itself is thirstier in these conditions because the air is heavier, and the management system naturally monitors that, and the mixture will be notably richer. The management system will throw more fuel into the combustion chambers, so the consumption of the engine actually comes up as it adjusts itself to the conditions. And Prost had a very slow lap there behind Nakajima, and the fierce Nakajima has cost Prost 4 seconds, believe it or not. 5 seconds on that lap. It was a 2 minutes 10.6, and Prost was lapping around 2:05.5. So that on its own will really probably have put Senna beyond reach. So Nakajima has ensured a win for Senna by the look of things. But we can still possibly look forward to changing conditions, so we may yet get a bit of a turnaround towards the end of the race if we get no more rain.
As Ayrton Senna, the leader, comes up to the Arrows Megatron of Derek Warwick, who is in 8th position. Warwick, who's already had 4 top 6 finishes this year. Ayrton Senna laps then the 8th place man, and you can see the way that the Brazilian faultlessly slices past men that he wants to get ahead of. He's undeterred by the appalling conditions, and Derek Warwick in 8th position has got behind him Maurizio Gugelmin, who actually started 4th on the grid and who finished 4th in the British Grand Prix. Gugelmin is making heavier weather of the conditions here in Germany than he did at Silverstone 2 weeks ago. He's in 9th place on the race order on lap 33 with 11 laps to go. The man you're looking at, Ayrton Senna, on his way at the moment to his 5th Grand Prix victory in 9 races this year. 15 seconds ahead now of Alain Prost. Berger is still 3rd, Nannini is still 4th, Alboreto is 5th, Capelli is in 6th position, Boutsen is 7th, Warwick is 8th and has been lapped, Gugelmin is in 9th position. Then behind Maurizio Gugelmin is De Cesaris 10th, Patrese 11th, Nakajima is 12th, Chiva is 13th, Schneider is 14th, Jonathan Palmer is running in 15th place, and then Oscar Larari, making very heavy weather of the conditions, is 16th and has been lapped twice. And we still have 22 runners out of the original 26 who started. Senna leading by 15.5 seconds. That is Berger. Sorry, that is Schneider. In the background with the yellow flashes is Gerhard Berger, the Austrian, who I suspect is once again having the frustrating experience of having to race with a very gentle right foot, watching his fuel counter and watching very carefully the fuel consumption. And you can see in the background Nannini, who is now just under 7 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, who is in 3rd position. And it's quite possible that Nannini, who finished 3rd at Silverstone, is going to do the same thing here, because he's starting to catch Gerhard Berger, who I suspect has got the same problem that he had at Silverstone, too much fuel being consumed. We'll soon see, but this is lap 34. Conditions with the skies brightening are not really any better as Berger goes through and takes Schneider.
Yes, and Schneider put him completely on the grass then. That was a very nasty moment indeed for Berger. And there you see, and Berger quite rightly giving him a big fistful. Schneider really unaware of Berger's presence, and that's pretty poor driving, because when you're in a slower car as he is, you have a big responsibility to look in your mirrors. You expect people to be coming up quicker than you, and that's very naughty indeed.
Yeah, they both speak the same language, German, albeit Berger, I presume, with an Austrian accent, and I'm sure there's going to be a healthy dialogue between them at the end of this race. 15.7 seconds is the gap still between Senna in the lead on lap 35 and Prost in second position. Yet again, we face the prospect, a well-deserved prospect for the McLaren team, of yet another first and second place. Berger really sliding the Ferrari in third position.
Yes, that was a terrific shot of Berger, really throwing the car around. And he said, now here we see again what Schneider does. Berger's committed, he's alongside him, there's nothing Berger can do. You get no braking on the grass. And really, that was idiot driving by Schneider.
Yeah, let's watch Berger's right hand. Let's see if we get the... no, we don't. And De Cesaris has gone missing. Andrea De Cesaris is missing from our lap chart. He was in 10th position. And now Patrese, and there's Prost! Prost spinning! Prost in second position when he regains the circuit, no problem there. But Prost has obviously lost time, so his tyres are wearing. That means, of course, that Senna's are too. But he's now going to have increased his gap. Here's a replay of it. Let's see what happened to Prost.
Yes, and you see he just got his left rear wheel onto that curb, which is very slippery in the wet. An error really of concentration there from Prost, but it really finishes any challenge that he has to Ayrton Senna, and Senna now all he has to do is to keep everything together, keep it on the road, look after a car mechanically, cross his fingers in the hope that nothing will go wrong with the car, and he will take the effective lead in the World Championship by having 5 wins to Prost's 4.
Yes, it's worth reiterating that the World Championship is actually decided on the best 11 results from the 16 races. So, as James said, assuming that Senna wins this race, as he looks highly likely to, he would have 5 wins to Prost's 4 and would therefore effectively take the lead in the World Championship, notwithstanding the fact that Prost would still be 3 points ahead after 9 races. So there is Senna. He won't have heard, of course, that Prost has half-spun, but he'll be getting a signal, probably through his earphones, a verbal one from Ron Dennis, and also a confirmation on his pit board. He is now on lap 36 out of 44. Another absolutely immaculate drive. He won in San Marino, he won in Canada and Detroit, and then in the British Grand Prix, he was second in Mexico, second in France, failed to finish at Monaco, was disqualified in Brazil, his home Grand Prix, through absolutely no fault of his own. And he's making very, very sure of things here. Well, that is the Steve Nichols design McLaren. I'm sure Steve Nichols is probably in big demand from other teams now, because we're well into the silly season of rumours and counter-rumours. There's a strong rumour that Frank Gurney, the aerodynamicist of the Williams team, who perhaps significantly is not here in Germany, will be joining Ligier next year. And my goodness, they certainly need him, because Johansson again failed to qualify here for the German Grand Prix. Senna goes through now to complete his 36th lap. I was saying, Gurney possibly going to Ligier. There, we know that Gustav Brunner, the Austrian designer, is going to Zakspeed next year, and I'm quite sure, as I was saying, that Steve Nichols, and that is Patrese, Riccardo Patrese, out of the German Grand Prix and out of 10th position. Now, this is very significant to me. With Prost spinning and Patrese going off, it looks to me as though tyres are getting very, very marginal.
Yes, and certainly one would expect that. There's been dry bits of the track pretty much throughout the race, and I was a bit optimistic in the Williams team, and obviously Patrese had reported that he was in tyre trouble, because you could see the Williams team just before we saw Patrese off. We saw his team sitting there with a new set of wets for him, so he was contemplating a change. And with these wets backing up and beginning to wear out like this, stand by for a few more dramas and little minor offs before the end of the race.
27 seconds now between Senna and Prost. So that spin of Prost cost him 12 seconds. Not very much, actually, but virtually double the lead that Ayrton Senna here had over his teammate. And not that Alain Prost is a man who is going to be easily, if at all, rattled, but Senna will be psychologically ahead now after the German Grand Prix. One Grand Prix more than the double world champion Alain Prost wins in 1988. You're looking now down at the infield section as Senna goes into the right-handed Opel curve. You see the enormous grandstands here at Hockenheim, which will hold 100,000 people. There aren't 100,000 people here today, but there are certainly a tremendous number. And Senna now is into his 38th lap in this 44-lap race, and he is leading Alain Prost by 21.7 seconds. Berger third, Nannini fourth, Alboreto still fifth, both Ferraris still running, which was more than they were at this stage in the British Grand Prix. Capelli is sixth and in the points, another point for the March team. Thierry Boutsen is seventh. Warwick has been lapped in 8th position. Gugelmin is in 9th position in the second March. Nakajima is 10th in the Lotus. His teammate Nelson Piquet out on the very first lap, of course. He had the misjudgment to start on slick tyres. 11th is Chiva. Jonathan Palmer is now up into 12th position. Schneider is 13th. Riccardo Patrese, who has just gone out, was in 14th, which means to say that Streff is in that position. And we've still got 20 runners. Andrea de Cesaris, and there is Nannini, 4th position behind Berger.
Nini into the pits, so Nannini probably going for a new set of wets, but he looks to be going quite slowly. And Senna's last lap, and I see Dalmas off the road. It seems to be, there he is, that same old corner each time, the Sachs curve, the second one in the stadium. Now Senna's last lap was 4 seconds or so slower than he has been going, and I don't think we need read any immediate panic into that. He's got bags of time to play with. I think he's just slowing up because he will be very conscious now of what happened to him in Monte Carlo this year when he made error and by his own admission just fell asleep, lost concentration. It cost him very dear, so he'll be thinking about that and thinking about how not to do that again. Very hard indeed, I should think.
Senna well away then now on his 39th lap, 44-lap race. He is up towards the first chicane as Prost comes out of the stadium section. 21 seconds now. Ayrton Senna leading on lap 39 out of 44, with Alain Prost in second position, 21.5 seconds behind. Gerhard Berger third in the Ferrari. Alessandro Nannini in 4th place, but has gone into the pits. So, and now up into 4th place has gone Alboreto. Here is Nannini in the pits. And up into 5th place, therefore, will go Ivan Capelli. And it certainly wasn't a tyre change. It's something to do with the engine, as you can well see. Mike in the headphones there working on the 4DFR engine. And Alessandro Nannini has certainly lost a points place in the German Grand Prix. And Senna is still on his 39th lap. Here he is. Lap 39, Ayrton Senna leading the German Grand Prix, almost completed it, 21.5 seconds ahead of his teammate Alain Prost on the way to another McLaren 1-2. Third is Gerhard Berger. In fourth position now, the second Ferrari, that of Michele Alboreto. In fifth place is Ivan Capelli, and up into the points to replace the Benetton of Nannini comes Benetton. Senna, Prost, Berger, Alboreto, Capelli and Benetton, with two 3.5-litre cars, those of Capelli, the March, and Benetton, the Benetton, in the top 6 places. And it really is brightening up now as Senna goes across the line to start his 40th lap. There he goes out of the stadium section, past the end of the enormous continuous grandstand. And Prost now has got Gugelmin in front of him, who is in 9th position. Alain Prost coming up to lap Gugelmin. And I should think he's settled for second place because he's still 22 seconds behind this man, Ayrton Senna. And yet another Honda-powered victory, because they have won every Grand Prix this year in a McLaren. Honda engines are also in the Lotus cars, of course, but McLaren have been showing the yellow Lotuses the way all through 1988. Here's Senna. McLaren-Honda victories in every Grand Prix, and it's beginning to look as though Ron Dennis's ambition of winning all 16 could well come true. We've had a McLaren first at just about every possible kind of going this year. Everything from the twists and turns of Monaco and Detroit to the fast circuit at Silverstone here at Hockenheim. Here is Benetton coming towards us now, and he is in 6th position, shortly to be lapped by Ayrton Senna with 5 laps to go. And one can only say again that it is really up to the opposition. It is up to all the others, to Ferrari, to Williams, to Arrows, to March, to get their act well enough together to enable them to offer a challenge to the invincible McLaren team, who have done and are doing a fantastic job. There's the Brazilian flag at the left of the board for Ayrton Senna, telling him exactly what the situation is. And there are Brazilian flags here in profusion at Hockenheim. It seems to me that Senna has got a permanent core of Brazilian fans who follow him round. If not, there are an enormous number of Brazilians in every country in the world, because as if by magic on the closing stages, and certainly on the last lap, the Brazilian flags appear to greet him home. And he's got, there's Benetton in the green Benetton. They are really struggling for grip now. This is lap 41. Still 42, 43, 44. 3 laps to go at the end of this one. Derek Warwick there in 7th position. And the gap between Senna and Prost is still just under 24 seconds. He, as you look at Gerhard Berger in 3rd position with Alboreto 4th on the board there. The Ferraris seem to have overcome their fuel consumption problem, although I'm mindful of the fact that there are still 3 laps to go at the end of this one. Seem to have overcome their fuel consumption problem, but at the expense of speed. We saw at Silverstone, where admittedly the McLarens were having handling trouble due to the aerodynamic changes that they had made, that the Ferrari was quicker in qualifying than the 2 McLarens, but they are still in a less fuel-efficient situation with their Ferrari V6 engines than the McLaren team are with their Honda V6 engine. And we know that Honda have got a V10, which is already being tested for the 3.5-litre change next year, when all Grand Prix cars will have to have 3.5-litre engines. Bernard Dudo, the Renault engine chief, is here at Germany, in Germany. He has designed a V10 engine for Renault, which is going to power the Williams next year. And hopefully the racing is going to be a lot closer in 1989 than it has been thus far in 1988. And Senna has just got 3 laps to go now, including the one he is on, to make his 5th Grand Prix victory of 1988. I'm sure he's going to be very circumspect about passing Boutsen.
Yes, he may well not bother. There's no real reason to do that. Still sliding away. It's still very slippery round the back to those tall trees, of course. Not only preventing it much air movement, but also holding the humidity of all that rain within them. And if you've got to have a wet race, this is probably a nice way to do it, because apart from the opening couple of laps, the spray has not been too bad, and visibility hasn't been brought down to 0 as it becomes when the track is very wet.
So, sure enough, Senna is taking his time about Boutsen. There's the Belgian with the Brazilian just taking a look to the left of the Benetton. Berger's Ferrari is sounding very sick indeed all of a sudden, spluttering and banging as he went into his 42nd lap. Maybe I spoke too soon about fuel consumption. Is Gerhard Berger going to finish the race? If he doesn't, will Alboreto, who is in 4th position, finish it? And it's not inconceivable that Capelli could therefore finish in 3rd place. Senna looking over his shoulder. He's just passed the Lola. Here's Alain Prost in 2nd place. The gap has come down to 20 seconds now, but it's because Senna is going slower rather than, well, Prost is actually, in fact, going quicker, but I'm sure it's because Ayrton Senna is just very wisely taking things easy in the closing stages of the race. The gap is down to 17 seconds, and Senna is now on his last lap but one, so he can afford to take things very, very easily indeed. And there is, I'm sorry to tell you, absolutely no drama about the first 6 places, with Senna leading Prost. Berger is 56 seconds, not all that far off, a whole 2/3 of a lap anyway, behind Ayrton Senna in 3rd position. And he is some 30 seconds ahead of Michele Alboreto, who is in 4th place. Well, there is the Ferrari. That's Berger in 3rd position, Alboreto 4th, Capelli is still in 5th position with Boutsen in 6th place. And Ayrton Senna has just got 1 lap to go at the end of this one. And if we could have heard the radio discussion that will be going on, I'm sure, between Senna, race leader, and Ron Dennis on the McLaren pit lane, it would be something like, take it easy, Ayrton. You have 17 laps over Alain, who must have settled for 2nd place. Senna with a very wise head on his comparatively young, he's 28 years old, shoulders. And there's Prost coming up to take René Arnoux, who waves him through. And you can see, incidentally, the new airbox on the Ligier, or could have seen, as Senna goes past him. And now Ayrton Senna crosses the line to go into his 44th and last lap on his way to his 5th win of 1988.
Yes, very good drive indeed by Ayrton Senna, much as we've come to expect in the wet. The McLaren-Honda once again appears to have behaved without any drama or problem, and Senna's day's work was pretty much over at the start of the race. When he got away, he found more grip than Prost, managed to get into the first corner first, and then it was a question really of how quickly Prost could get past Berger and Nannini, who got away in front of him. And in fact, it took Alain Prost too many laps to do that, and by the time he got through, he was 12.5 seconds behind Senna, and nobody can give Senna a 12.5 second start in the same car in wet conditions. Prost made a terrific fight of it for a while. When they weren't in traffic, he was lapping quicker than Senna, but not by very much, not enough to seriously threaten Senna. And then later in the race, Prost had a little spin, and it was absolutely all chance gone. So there goes Senna. Probably won't bother to pass Boutsen. No, he'll just sit behind him, which Boutsen probably doesn't want. Boutsen would rather let him pass than it'll save him doing another lap. There's no point, no reason for that. I'm quite sure Boutsen, if he's thinking about it, he might back off on the straight and wave Senna through. Yes, he's trying to make Senna pass him. Senna knows why, and that's fine. They're not threatened. So marvellous drive by Senna. Quite a fighting drive by Prost, but it was too late when he got past. It was in the first 10 or so laps of the race that it was lost for Alain Prost.
Here he is into the last right-hander, the man of the year now, because he has passed, or is shortly going to have passed, Alain Prost in terms of race victories in 1988. Ayrton Senna wins the German Grand Prix. There is the happy McLaren. You can see Gordon Murray in the background. There's Steve Nichols. That is a quietly smiling Ron Dennis, practicing his smiling look, he would say. Alain Prost finishes second. There he is. So again, it is a dominating race for the McLaren team, first and second. It looks as though with Gerhard Berger there almost home in third position, we are going to have Ferraris in third and fourth places. Although there's going to be a long gap between Michele Alboreto in third place and number 28 there, Gerhard Berger, taking third position. So Berger is almost home. He really could kick out the clutch now and coast home. He doesn't have to worry about fuel consumption anymore. Victory for Ayrton Senna. Second place for Prost. Third place for Gerhard Berger. I'm looking across the stadium. I can see Michele Alboreto, who will certainly finish in fourth place. It should therefore be Ivan Capelli in the march in fifth place, the last man to go the full distance, because Boutsen, who's finished sixth already, has been lapped by Ayrton Senna. And there's a very happy Ron Dennis. So confirmation, victory for Ayrton Senna, second for Alain Prost, third for Berger, fourth for Alboreto, fifth for Capelli, and in sixth position, Thierry Boutsen.
Senna takes the race, but it's still Alain Prost leading the championship by 3 points. But as Murray pointed out earlier, drivers include only their best 11 results from 16 races. So Senna's 5 wins against Prost's 4 put him in the strong